So welcome back after the coffee break. My name is Patrik Brundin. I'm the Associate Director of Research here. So I work with Peter, who's the director who spoke to you this morning. And I was asked to give a few words of sort of provocative introduction to the conference. And I thought I would talk about the fact that it says here, the king is dead, long live the king. But I was actually thinking the postdoc is dead, long live the postdoc. And in 5-6 minutes, I'm going to explain to you what I mean, because these are the statistics published a month ago. For the first time in modern history, the number of postdocs in biomedical science in the US has declined more than 1 year in successions, 3 years in a row here. Clearly, something is happening in the postdoc world that hasn't happened before. Science picked up on this, and they talked about the case of the disappearing postdocs in a commentary just a month before that paper came out. So what is going on? Why are there fewer postdocs? And I think you all know there is not one single answer to this. Several things are happening at the same time. I believe that postdocs are underpaid today relative to the rest of the world today, but also relative to what they were in the old days. They've lost purchasing power. There's very poor job security, and the modern person today values job security much more than perhaps I did or Peter did in his youth. It's a different culture in terms of this. Endless work hours is not a great thing, especially if you're a little bit old and have family. Limited time to expand the skill set is a major issue for many postdocs. They're not really, as you all know, offered training. They're workhorses in the labs, asked to produce data, just sit there, work. And that isn't very exciting, especially not if the career opportunities are bleak afterwards. And we know with tightening of federal funding and the overall crisis of research in terms of funding, not just from federal agencies, it's difficult to get a faculty position. Many people transform. They start as postdocs. After 4, 8, 12 years, they transform into permadocs. Who wants to be a permadoc? And it's hard to break out of it because of the decreased access to funding, even for those who are faculty. That transition from postdoc to young faculty or these other transition positions is even more difficult than it used to be. And finally, and I think this is quite important, today team science is more important. However, we have not developed a way of assessing achievement, contribution to science that has followed the evolution of team science. So there's a low level of recognition. If you're a postdoc and you're author number 27 on a 42-author paper, you may have done a great job. When I was a postdoc in Sweden in the late 80s, sometimes we'd have 6 authors. We might have 4 on most of our papers. And the name and the contribution of the postdoc was always pretty obvious. So this is another change. And I think the reason the number of postdocs is decreasing is not just the lack of available funding. It's also because many of the young, talented, newly graduated PhDs think, I don't want to do a postdoc. And we, the senior people in this world, we're just catching up with this thinking now, but perhaps we've been taking you, the postdocs, for granted. And you know you can never do that in any sort of relationship, be it work life or private life, because then they know they can live without you. So fortunately, the NIH has realized it's important to figure out how one could get a right balance in the number of PhDs who are produced and the number of postdoc available slots and the number of tenured faculties. And they had this workforce working group report that came out in 2012 where they looked across the whole spectrum from undergrad to the full professor. And they tried to figure out how one can get a balance. And I downloaded this yesterday, and I was browsing the postdoc part, and I saw this wonderful quote. The government should provide a reasonable number of undergraduate scholarships and graduate fellowships in order to develop scientific talent in American youth. The plan should be designed to attract into science only that proportion of youthful talent appropriate to the needs of science in relation to the needs of the nation for higher abilities. Basically, don't make too many PhDs if they're not really needed. And isn't it great that they've realized this, that this is really coming to the forefront of the thinking? The only problem, this quote is from the report, it's on the front pages in the foreword, and it was written in 1945. So 71 years ago, we knew that this balance was an issue. So what is the solution? I don't know what the solution is. Some people say we should reinvent the labs. The way they are today, they shouldn't be so big. So they're talking about the heart of the problem is the structure of the lab. There should be more people with secure positions who are not trainees in the lab and fewer trainees. And there's another analysis which is actually rather controversial. This also just came out. Bigger is not better when it comes to lab size. Somebody looked at productivity of labs and realized having 30 postdocs doesn't make you 30 times more productive or impactful as opposed to having one postdoc in a lab. My time is up. I don't have a solution. I've just noticed that this is something that's happening. I think it is something we have to be concerned about. And I think you, as a postdoc association, you're the ones who perhaps can help shape the future of the postdoc so that 71 years from now, there isn't another meeting like this where somebody else is saying the same thing again. So I hope you will enjoy your conference, and between the talks and in the evenings and the coffee breaks, you have a chance to solve this tricky problem. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrik. Good morning, everyone. I'm Rowena Dineros from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I will be your plenary moderator today. Before I introduce our two wonderful speakers today, I would like to ask everyone to please hold your questions until the end when we have our panel discussion. Our first speaker today is Dr. Elizabeth Travis. Dr. Travis is the Associate Vice President for Women Faculty Programs, Mattie Allen Fair Professor in Cancer Research and Professor in the Departments of Experimental Radiation Oncology and Pulmonary Medicine at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. Dr. Travis, an internationally recognized scientist, has made significant contributions to our understanding of the effects of radiation on normal tissues in her 25 years in the field. She is past president of the Radiation Research Society and the first radiobiologist to be elected to the board of the American Society of Radiation Oncology. In her leadership role as Associate Vice President for Women Faculty Programs at MD Anderson Cancer Center, she is a consummate advocate for women faculty and is committed to furthering their academic careers by ensuring they are appointed to high-profile committees and leadership positions, by leading institutional policy change to address obstacles that interfere with women's success, and by providing career guidance to countless women faculty. Her many honors include election as Fellow of the American Society of Radiation Oncology. Dr. Travis was inducted into the Greater Houston Women's Chamber of Commerce Hall of Fame in 2012 that honors women who have contributed significantly to the advancement of women and improved the quality of life for future generations of Houstonians, and was elected a member of the board of directors of the Chamber in 2013. Most recently, she was elected to the board of directors of the Association for Women in Science. Dr. Travis received the Marie Curie Award from the American Association for Women Radiologists in 2014. Our next speaker after Dr. Travis is Dr. Jabbar Bennett. Dr. Bennett serves as Associate Provost for Diversity and Inclusion at Northwestern University. In addition, he is an Associate Professor of Medicine at Northwestern's Feinberg School of Medicine. As the university's Chief Diversity Officer, he is responsible for leading and coordinating efforts to create a diverse, inclusive, and welcoming environment for all Northwestern community members. Prior to joining Northwestern, Dr. Bennett served as Associate Dean of the Graduate School, Associate Dean for Diversity in the Division of Biology and Medicine, and Clinical Assistant Professor of Medicine at the Warren Alpert Medical School of Brown University. In the graduate school, he was responsible for recruitment and coordinating professional development activities for graduate students and postdocs. In the Division of Biology and Medicine, Dr. Bennett oversaw the recruitment and advancement of medical students, faculty, and trainees who are members of underrepresented groups. Dr. Bennett is a life member of the Student National Medical Association and former professional board member. Currently, he serves as a member of the Association of American Medical Colleges, Graduate Research Education and Training, Group Steering Committee, Council of Graduate Schools, Diversity and Inclusiveness Advisory Committee, and the Keystone Symposia on Molecular and Cellular Biology Diversity Advisory Committee. Now I would like to ask Dr. Elizabeth Travis to come up and start our session.
Good morning, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me and for the committee. And I want to congratulate the local people for putting this wonderful conference together. This is a huge endeavor. And guess what they did? What has this group of individuals who put this conference together, what did they do? They led. They were leaders. What were you just challenged with in the introductory talk about, there are too many postdocs, what are we going to do with the postdocs? Are there too many? Who's going to fund them? What should labs look like? So a challenge was thrown down to all of you. And what is that challenge? For you to, can I hear it? Lead. Yes, yes, you are. Some of you are already leaders and probably don't know that, and you have to think about that because you are, but you're all being challenged, and there are many challenges for us in the future, for you in the future, not me, but for you and for your future in science and medicine. So leadership, I think, is really an appropriate topic. A lot of times we think that, leadership is only for the very senior people, like myself. No, 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 no. So, first of all, this is from Tom Check, and you can read this. So what he is saying is that you're getting hired for your scientific skills and your research potential when you do go out and look for a position, but you're going to have to be able to lead a group to do this. So being a leader, understanding what it is to be a leader, gaining the skills to be a leader is really critical to your success. So why do you need it? Number one, you told us that you want it. Postdocs and graduate students want leadership training. So I'm at the University of Texas. MD Anderson Cancer Center is a freestanding cancer center, but we're part of the big university system. We have a new chancellor who came a year and a half or so ago. His name is McRaven. Anybody know who McRaven is? He was the SEAL. He was the head of special forces that led the raid and got bin Laden. That's who our chancellor is. He's an ex-Navy SEAL. Yes, 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 he is. He also, but he's a graduate of the University of Texas. Now, what's important about him is that he has decided that he wants leadership training starting all the way from undergraduate school, all of our undergraduate schools, through graduate education, all the way up through, the very senior people. So leadership training is very much on his mind, and we are all being asked at MD, or throughout the university system, to think how we're going to train people like you for leadership positions. Group leaders want you because those who are already there want you because they want high-performing postdocs. You need a job. How are you going to set yourself apart from the other thousands of postdocs coming out of training? One of the ways you do that is by picking up some leadership skills and having some leadership opportunities and finding those leadership opportunities. And finally, we need well-trained group leaders. I think if we look at what's happening politically in this country, and if you look at some of the debates, those wouldn't in my book qualify as leaders. I'm sorry. So let me ask you, just take a minute to think about what does leadership mean to you? to you individually, what does it mean? Yes. So that's the other thing. Don't be, to be a leader, you have to speak up, so don't be afraid to speak up. Somebody tell me, what does it mean to you? And you have to speak loudly, and I can repeat it if I can hear it up here. What does leadership mean? Decision-making. Correct. What else does it mean? Independence. Service position to your organization. Influence. Perfect.
Having the guts to take responsibility.
Yes. Yes. So I don't have to give this talk. You already know how to do this. You've given me all these answers. So basically, if you look at it this way, leadership is vision plus managing relationships and building relationships and managing tasks. Now, I have a definition here, and because I want to get through this talk, but what I want to do is, rather than, you can read this, I think the best example, so the first thing that you would have to do when you go out and you have your first lab, what do? You have to get people to gather around you and to see your vision and help you enact that vision. So you have a mission statement. So this is a bunch of words, but here's some example of mission statements. I think examples are always so much better than words. So these are a couple of mission statements built by, and here's a wonderful book if you haven't read it or if you haven't seen this, Making the Right Moves, Practical Guide to Scientific Management for Postdocs and New Faculty. And it is terrific, and a lot of the talking points came from this. But you can read this. The goal is to be among the most successful and respected in the area of cancer genetics. Very clear mission, and help to develop better therapies and cures. So think about what it is and be able to succinctly state that. How many of you have an elevator speech ready? Yay. For those of you who don't, start thinking about your elevator speech, because this should be your elevator speech eventually. This should be the speech that you can say, this is what I want my group to do. This is what I want my lab to do. This is how I'm going to lead this group. Have a very clear mission statement, and that should be your elevator speech. So what is it? You've heard all this. I've asked, what does a leader do? Communicate. Communications are incredibly important, to be able to communicate. But even more importantly than you talking is you listening. Being able to listen, not only listen, to really hear what people are saying to you. You have to motivate, resolve conflicts. That's a tough one. So that's one thing that everybody probably should take a class on conflict management and conflict resolution. You can never go wrong by trying to get more training in these areas. Set and enforce expectations. Setting them is easy. Sometimes enforcing them is not as easy. You have to be a leader, but you also have to manage. And finally, you have to build and sustain a diverse team. And I look around this audience, and I am so encouraged by what I see here. I see a diverse, very diverse group of postdocs, a diverse group that's coming into the workforce, and we really need that. And why do we need that? Because Scott Page is a person who is kind of the guru on diversity. There's a lot of information out there now that the more homogeneous a group is, the more groupthink you have, the less innovative are the solutions to complex problems. So diversity equals productivity. But I like to think of diversity as not being just counting the numbers. It's making the numbers count. It's bringing people to the table, making sure that you, as a leader, listen to them. You hear what they're saying. You include them in the conversation. And in light of that, how many of you know about the Harvard Implicit Association Test? Good, good. A lot of you have taken it, and if you all haven't taken it, here is the URL. Just go to that, because what it does is it allows you to ask the question, how many of you think you're totally fair and you have no biases? Okay. Most of us think we're pretty, we don't have very many biases. We think we're fair, and we really try to be. But we all have a set of biases that we come with from our upbringing, from where we went to school. There are a lot of biases, and the best way to confront those and overcome those is to know that you have them. To know that you have them. And the Harvard IAT will allow you to take a test, and you can take it for women, you can take it for gender, you can take it for anything, take it for religion, you can take it for body image, and it'll allow you to uncover your own, what biases you may have towards a certain group or certain individuals. And that is incredibly important, because when you are making decisions as a leader, you have to make sure that decisions you're making to choose this person over that person aren't because this person looks like you, but it's because this person has the best skills, and if they don't, then why aren't you choosing that person? So I really, really encourage you. You cannot operate the way science used to operate, and that is without much diversity. When I was coming up as a scientist, there weren't a whole lot of women. That has totally changed. 50% of the Ph.D.s in life sciences are awarded to women. So things are changing. It's going to be up to you, though, to make sure that those voices, as a leader, those voices are included in the conversations and are heard and listened to. So I encourage you, and we like to believe, I love this quote, we love to believe that we're open-minded, fair, and without bias, but research shows otherwise. And this is important, even if uncomfortable. If you haven't read the book by Bennett, it's called Blind Spots. It's a really interesting book. I encourage you to read that. And I love the cartoon. How can I address my biases if I don't even know I have them? So I encourage you to learn more about you. Knowing more about you will only increase your effectiveness as a leader. So what are the characteristics of leaders? Here they are. But I like to look at yesterday, and I like to look at not only tomorrow, our future leaders, but you, what you look like, today's leaders. We need different skill sets. It's not necessarily all white males anymore, where it used to be very individualistic, tactical, tenure track. Leaders are coming very, very different. They wear very different outward clothing, and they look different. You have to be aligned with your organization, diverse. Obviously, it's clear how important I think this is. Teamwork. We just heard about the 40-some authors on a paper. How do we work in that environment? How do we give credit fairly where it's due? Competence-centered instead of knowledge-centered. Not everybody's on the tenure track anymore, except in science. That's still a big deal. That is still the coin of the realm. And that you get fulfillment from it, instead of status, title, and income. So I think that those of you in this audience, in fact, look like this and not like yesterday's. So what are the leadership skills that you need, and how can you find them? You can read. So you need basic skills, knowing what your vision is, communicating it. We've been through these, motivate. These are all the things you already said. Advanced is transformational. You have to decide what kind of leader you're going to be. You're going to have to so one of the things that I encourage everybody in this room to do is to take a course on negotiating and learn how to negotiate. I particularly encourage the women in the room and also the minorities, particularly the women. Women don't like to negotiate. Women get an offer and they say, that we're relieved. Thank you, thank you. No, you have to step back from that and you have to ask the question, is this offer going to allow me to do the job? Do I have enough resources? Because you don't want to accept something if you don't have enough resources to be successful. So every one of you, learn to negotiate. Take negotiation courses. There are plenty of them. How to improve your skills? Read books. Attend these conferences like you're doing now. Get to know your strengths. More importantly, identify your weaknesses, because strengths are easy to deal with. Weaknesses, not so much. And it's really important for the character of a leader to know what your weaknesses are and try to overcome those, or at least get people to work with you in areas where you aren't so strong. So a leader is someone who has to recognize that they don't know everything. Find a mentor, or what I think you need to find, and some of you have heard me before, is a sponsor. And Jabbar is going to talk a little bit more about mentoring, but I want to talk a little bit about sponsors. So mentors and sponsors are different. There are overlaps, which you can see here. They give advice and guidance, and they make introductions, they give feedback. But they are very different in the ways that I'm showing here. Most importantly, sponsors are public. They're sticking their neck out for somebody, and they're saying, I vouch for one of you in the room, and I'll give you an example later. They open doors for your next move. Mentors are frequently behind the scene. Mentors don't have to announce that they're your mentor. So the big difference is, and a mentor can be any rank or position. You all can be mentors. Postdocs can be mentors to the graduate student. Frequently, you are called on to do that in your labs. You know that. So you can be a mentor. Sponsors need to have some power, and they're sticking their neck out for you to advance you to a position, or opening doors for people so that people can see you as a potential leader of the future. So I like this. If you want to know the difference, to me, this says it all. A mentor listens to you and speaks with you, but a sponsor talks about you, in only the best possible terms, of course. So here I am. When I was a postdoc, I was at the Gray Lab in London. This is the party they gave me when I was leaving. You can see the British flag and the American flag flying in the window at the lab. And the man there, Jack Fowler is his name, was my mentor. He was the head of the lab, but he was also my mentor. But he was also my sponsor. We would go to meetings, and he would say, come along over here, Liz. I want you to meet, somebody in the field who was, a big name and who would be important for my next position. And that's what sponsors do. They take you and they introduce you, they open doors, and then he would just leave you there, and you'd have to have a conversation with this individual. So you want to have people who do that for you. Right over on the other side, that's Tina Haston. Tina was my graduate student. Tina's now associate professor at McGill, and I was her sponsor. She wanted to be on the editorial board of the professional journal that I was the past president of the organization. And she was reviewing for the journal, but she couldn't get on the editorial board. We were at a meeting a couple years ago, and she came up to me and told me this, and so I said, well, let's just go over and talk to the journal editor if he's at the booth. So we went over, and luckily he was there. And I said, John, I want you to meet Tina, John. Tina would like to be, she's a reviewer. She'd like to be on the editorial board. And I walked away, and she was on the editorial board next year. So the reason for that is I had cachet, the organization. I had chips in the organization. I was a past president. But I took her over there, and because of that, I kind of, gave her my blessing, because he didn't know her, and they put her on the editorial board. That's what sponsors do. That's what you need people to do for you. That's who you want to look for. So we were asked to talk a little bit about our journey. So with I'll do this very quickly. I call mine the long and winding road, because I did not go straight from undergraduate to graduate to finishing my Ph.D. to a postdoc. I had a number of twists and turns, and that's okay, because I eventually got where I wanted to be, which is standing in front of you talking about you as the next leaders. But so this is my father, who, and when I was actually a postdoc, that's when I had come back from England for a holiday, and he was very instrumental in encouraging me as a woman to go to college at a time when I was the first woman in my family to go to college. And he was very insistent that both my sister and I go to school, because he didn't, and he always wanted us to. My mother was as well. From there, over on the top there, that's where I got my Ph.D. at the Medical University of South Carolina. I don't know where we found the picture. Thank you, yes. Over there is one of the things I did as a postdoc. Over in the upper right-hand corner over there, that's a breathing machine, a plethysmograph for measuring breathing rates of mice, and that's the way that we measured pulmonary damage in the lungs of irradiated mice without killing them, which was what everybody had to do. You just counted the number of dead bodies, or you sacrificed them, looked at the damage. This was actually enabled us to quantify the injury before the animal was sick enough to try to design interventions. And so that's mainly what I did as a postdoc. I've been very involved with students. So the picture down here is not long ago, but instead of being a scientist, I actually considered being a dancer. I love to dance. I started dancing at a very young age, and I decided that probably I would starve as a dancer because there's talent and luck for sure. And I figured I could at least make a living as a scientist, so I went the scientist route. But I continue to dance, and it's really a lot of fun. So that's part of something that I stopped for a while and came back and picked up. This is when my office opened, when I decided that I wanted to move to a little bit different career. After being a scientist, leading a lab for 25 years, I loved science, I loved the lab, I loved discovery. This is one of the most fulfilling professions I think that anybody can ever have, is to be a scientist. It's a lifelong learning. But I decided that I really wanted to spend more time focused on advancing women, and now also my office is taking on minorities, so we've expanded to minorities, to advance women and minorities in science and medicine, and that's when the office opened. We published a book. And finally, in the bottom here is my son, who is now 29. And this was when I was still in my lab, and I was doing my best to get this kid interested in science. And I'm sure you can tell by the look on his face that this was not going to be an option for him. He was only 4 years old at the time, but he's trying so hard to smile, and it just didn't make it. And indeed, he didn't go into science or medicine, but he chose his own road, and he's very happy with that. So I'd like to leave you with a couple of tasks. First of all, I want to ask a question. I have a couple more minutes. I'm a little over? Okay. First, I want everybody to think about what a mission statement would be for you. Before you leave this annual meeting, what will be the mission statement for your lab? Secondly, how many of you think that you hold a leadership position now? Good. Great, because a lot of times people don't recognize that you don't need a title. You can lead a symposium, you can organize a symposium, you can organize a meeting like this. That is part of leadership. Do not forget to put that on your CVs, because it shows leadership. It's what's going to get you a little more attention than somebody else who's finishing a postdoc who maybe hasn't done any of this. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Jabbar right now, but I want to thank you very much, and I look forward to the successes and seeing a lot of those successes that I think all of you are going to have. Thank you.
Good morning. I was going to say, you're not supposed to ask questions, but if I ask you questions, it's okay to answer. It's great to be here. As Liz said, I thank the organizers for the opportunity to come, and I'm so happy that I'm able to share my perspective on leadership, as Liz has shared hers, and share information that I think will be helpful for many of you in the room, as there are things that have been helpful for me. So I'm going to start by just giving you up front some of the key things that I feel are important for you as you lead yourself and as you consider leading others, and these are very broad. Engage in effective mentor-mentee relationships. Seek personal and professional development, just like you're doing today here. Participate in networking events. I can't tell you how much of a role networking has played in my personal and professional success, so don't underestimate that. The other thing I'll say, and I'll divulge up front, that I am truly an introvert. By skills, sort of assessment and otherwise, by my preferences. But being an introvert and being in the corner is a really sort of tough place to be if you want to lead. And I think you have to recognize the skills, the gifts, the talents, and the responsibilities that you have, especially when you're put in certain positions, and get beyond those fears. Develop social support, which I think is extremely important, and also understanding the power of negotiation. I could not impress that onto you more. Take a workshop, take a class, talk to somebody about it, read a book. For those of you who truly aspire to be leaders, to make a change, to do something significant in your life and the life of others, I think understanding negotiation is important. So I'll spend a minute talking about mentoring, and then I'll share a little bit of my story, and then encourage you to sort of move forward in the best way that you can and give you some tips. So about mentors. All the things on this screen, as you know, do apply to mentors. They can be friends, they can be encouraging. Mentors can also be resources, they can serve as a guide, they can be helpful, but mentors can also be spontaneous. They often can be spontaneous in telling you things they think you should do based on what they feel like they've observed or what they think you want to do, or regarding the talents that they feel you have. Mentors can also be extremely random. And when people are just random all the time, and again, in their own minds thinking about what motivates you or what you'd be good at or what you should put your energy into, it doesn't necessarily help you move forward. Mentors can also be perfect. And when you have the perfect mentor, you often put a lot of stress and pressure on yourself, trying to perform, trying to meet someone else's expectations for the work and for, around the impact and so forth that you want to have. So at times, mentors can give a gentle helping hand, as you see in this picture, and you may have a mentor who sort of interacts with you this way. Sometimes they can help you put things together. Maybe there are puzzle pieces laying all over the place that you know need to be in order for you to move forward. And sometimes they can give you a boost or even a boot, which some of us do need a boot sometime, and it's okay to do that. Mentoring from the outside in is what I just gave you an example of. When people see you and they see things going on and feel like, oh, you'd be good for this, you'd be great for that. And this is what happens until you decide what it is you want to do and the contribution that you want to make. I'm going to talk a little bit about mentoring from the outside in as it relates to my own leadership journey very briefly. So one of the best gifts I ever received was from my aunt, my only aunt, who gave me a book when I was maybe in kindergarten or before that allowed me to track my progress, my activities from K through 12. Does anyone have a book or something similar to this? Perfect. You laugh. Let me say this, though. For those of you who don't have something like this, but if you have children in your lives, whether they're your own, friends, other family members, I would encourage you to get them something like this so that they can have something to reflect on later, and they can determine if they reach their own personal goals. So I'm going to give you a glimpse into my personal life and story. I know you're giggling already because you can imagine what this is. So this was me in kindergarten. Yes. The other thing I'll say first about this particular book, and you can find some similar now, I'm sure, is that there's a page that's like an envelope, so you can put all your report cards and other things, certificates inside. So I have all mine in one place from K through 12, and it's really valuable. So this is me in kindergarten. I went to Cash, that was the name of the school. My teacher was Mrs. Ruth. The first day of school was Monday, right? Okay. I was 6. So not only was I 6, I was 3 feet tall, and at that time I weighed 60 pounds. So I've had an opportunity, I should say, to present this same part of this talk to various groups, including high school students, and I presented this to a group of students at Harvard Medical School once, and just as quickly as I've shown it to you, someone raised their hand and said, 3 feet tall, 60 pounds, you were obese. And I don't know if I was or not at the time, but that's beside the point. So this is the back of this particular page in kindergarten. So I said who my new friends were: Bart, Scott, Terry, Anthony, I spelled with an E, Johnny, Chris, N, there was another Chris. Activities: rabbits, hearts, apples, Santa Clauses, plate, and I don't know what that is. For achievements, I put sack race and broad jump, because at that time here, and yeah, you can clap if you want, it's funny. But it's real, this is all a true story. So for achievements, I put sack race and broad jump, and that was back in the day when we had sort of field days, these competitions, when physical activity was encouraged, and things like music and arts weren't optional, it was expected. So a lot has changed. And then I put awards, which to me at that time were sheets of paper. That's what they were. That's exactly what they were. You should see the rest of the book, but this is all I'm going to show you. So what I want to draw your attention to is the bottom that says, when I grow up, what I want to be. And if you take a look at this and you just look at sort of from my left to right, it was essentially broken down by sex. If you were a woman, these were the things that were being prescribed for you, things that you could aspire to do. If you were a woman, you could be a mother, right, a nurse, a school teacher, an airline hostess, a model even, or a secretary. And if you were a man, you could aspire to be a fireman, a policeman, which it looks like I considered briefly, a cowboy, an astronaut, a soldier, or a baseball player. Well, as you can see, I wrote in inventor. I think I spelled it wrong, but I knew at that time what I liked to do. I knew that I liked science. I liked science fiction. There were many cartoons on at the time. Saturday morning cartoons, as you know, are very different now. But there were all these things around us that encouraged to think big and dream differently. And I'm happy to say that I did come on to become a scientist. But again, it wasn't because of what people told me I should think about doing or being. It wasn't because people told me I should consider being a leader, but I did have parents, again, who were mentoring from the outside in, who recognized the talents that I had and helped to develop those. So when you're being mentored from the outside in, you often have lots of opportunities, but you find yourself figuring out, so now what do I do? People are saying, oh, you should do this, oh, you should do that, I think you'd be great. But again, you find yourself unbalanced. You find yourself thinking about what is really important to me. When you begin mentoring from the inside out and thinking about what you want to do, the difference you want to make, I think you waste less time and your activity then truly equates to progress. You begin to move forward in a very thoughtful way. So I'll quickly talk about what motivates people to be good leaders, and I believe those who are motivated or mentored, I should say, from the inside out tend to be those types of folks. I think it's really important that you identify your purpose. Think about the work you want to do, realize the talents that you have, what you're good at, and the impact you want to make, not just professionally, but also professionally as well. So I brought this because earlier this week, I read an article that says, study shows connection between life purpose and risk of death. And I'll just read quickly from the abstract. Possessing a high sense of purpose in life is associated with a reduced risk for mortality and cardiovascular events. Approaches to strengthening a sense of purpose might lead to improved health outcomes. There is a well-documented link between negative psychological risk factors and adverse health outcomes. And this analysis provides evidence that positive psychosocial factors can promote healthy physiological functioning and greater longevity. And I can provide the reference later if you're interested. Okay. So understand purpose and vision. Life without purpose, or with purpose, I should say, is quite precise and directed. Life without purpose can truly be depressing. Purpose provides vision, or the ability to see the end from the beginning, and vision helps you set goals which motivate a plan of action. Take time to determine your goals. When you determine your goals, it'll dictate your campaigns. So people who you spend time with, who can, I think, be encouraging, can provide information for you, who can be sponsors or be nurtured to become the sponsors that you need. It'll also help to inform the decisions that you make, predict your choices, create priorities, and also provide a measure for success. At a point, you'll get to where all of the opportunities that you have, which are better tailored and designed for you because you've sought them out, or because people who you know actually are presenting them to you because they understand what your vision is, these opportunities will far outweigh the challenges that you have. Now, I want to leave you with some best practices for all of these 21st century leaders. You heard Liz talk about her experience and her trajectory. You heard about my bio, and you know some of the places that I've worked. Many of the places where I worked and even where I trained as a postdoc, I was the only or one of the only people who not only looked like me, but came from the background that I did, who attended the types of schools I chose to attend. My bachelor's and doctoral degrees both come from historically black colleges and universities. And again, those were very conscious decisions that I made because I wanted to have that type of experience. But there are many best practices that I want to leave with you as 21st century leaders, especially those of you who may be women or members of underrepresented groups. And essentially, it's take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. The better you are at doing things, the more you will be in demand. The more people will expect of you, the more people will ask of you. But along with taking care of yourself, I think there are certain things you have to realize. You have to know that 21st century bias does truly exist. And in general, behavioral and psychological barriers have replaced the more blatant forms that we're used to. And what your challenge is as a leader, as you lead yourself, and as you lead people, as you lead groups, as you lead and influence organizations, is to recognize and make visible the invisible forms of bias. I will say in the work that I do now, as I think about the admissions of undergraduate and graduate professional students, the hiring of staff, the hiring of faculty, bias plays a role in all of these decisions, conversations, and even when people are brought on board trying to advance. And my work is to help educate folks at Northwestern about biases and to acknowledge that we all do have them. We all do, good and bad. Understand the impact of bias on self-esteem. And as scientists in the room, I think you will appreciate this. The impact of systemic bias is not restricted to the workplace, but may infiltrate your personal life as well. Underrepresented minorities and women sometimes interpret everyday bias for their own personal shortfalls and begin to blame themselves. Underrepresented minorities and women, as tiring as it is, must exercise additional caution in the workplace and overcompensate for existing stereotypes. And appropriately attributing negative outcomes to prejudice can serve as a self-protective function. The impact of bias is clearly linked to stress in underrepresented minorities and women. Stress is induced by many, many factors, including environmental, psychological, and biological dimensions. And let me just skip to the chase. And if you look at this one right here, prolonged stress can heighten susceptibility to autoimmune diseases like diabetes, exacerbate heart disease, digestive disorders, neurological disease, equaling a lower life expectancy and death. Stress is that real. And as you think about the impacts you want to make, the research agenda that you are moving forward, the work you might want to do to promote the careers of others, understand that it's going to be very taxing and it's going to be stressful, but there are ways that you can balance this out. I like this particular cover of Science magazine from 2006 because it relates to much of the work that we do and many of the experiences we had. It's essentially sort of a depiction of the board game that we all know as life. The object in any game, whether it's a board game or whether you call yourself a professional gamer today, I see some of the people in the audience like shrugging, like, what is this, right? If you're too young, maybe you've never played a board game. But for many of us, this is all we had. Before Atari and the Commodore and all that stuff, right? And they don't even make those anymore. But the idea with any game, of course, is to sort of play, and in the end, you hope to win, but if not, at least win, you hope to complete the game. So the idea is to expect challenges. You roll the die, you land on a space, you fail a test, you go back 2 spaces. You don't quit the game, you just roll the die and you go again. I think as you are on this trajectory of completing postdocs and working in sort of some of your earlier positions and moving forward, challenges will come. Those of us who are leaders know to expect these challenges and are prepared to respond in ways that will help to move us forward as opposed to hold us back. I encourage you to lead yourselves exceptionally well. Manage your emotions, learn how to manage your time. Time is one of the most important things in life that you'll ever have. Once it's spent, you don't get it back. And you have to think that critically for those of you who truly aspire to leadership. Manage your priorities and also manage your energy. There are some things that you will never significantly impact and absolutely some things and people's opinions you will never change. Understand that and learn how to work with and around that. Manage how you think and manage what you say. If you think negatively, you may begin to feel negatively. If you speak negatively all the time, lots of things may begin to come true and the people around you will also feel discouraged. When you're leading a team, it's extremely important to be truthful, but also to be optimistic and upbeat. And lastly, manage your personal life. Be empowered. Understand your potential Acknowledge your ability, confidently exercise your competence, pursue your ambition, and determine your contribution. I always like to talk about contribution because you heard some of the numbers, as Liz said, that 50% of the Ph.D. recipients in the biological sciences or STEM are women. The numbers are much lower when you look at members of underrepresented groups, racial and ethnic underrepresented groups, people with disabilities, and those who may be out, who are members of the LGBTQIA population. So there's a lot of work to do, and there are contributions that we can all make. You determine how best to make your own contribution. In my mind, the success equation is based on 4 simple things. Identify your purpose, ignite your passion, be persistent, and you will achieve the product. Purpose, passion, persistence, and product. Now, this picture looks familiar, right? What is it a picture of? Oz, right? And this is the Yellow Brick Road. And there were folks traveling the Yellow Brick Road to get to Oz to see, to get to what? Emerald City, to see a man called. Who was traveling the Yellow Brick Road? Dorothy, Lion, Tin Man, Scarecrow, and Toto. Toto is truly important. For those of you, no, really, Toto is important. For those of you who may be literature or history buffs, you'll know that all of the characters in this story did represent certain things at a time during the Industrial Revolution in this country. The symbolism that I want to discuss is slightly different. If you talked about Dorothy, you talked about Toto, the Tin Man, and the Lion. The Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow were actually on their way to a place called, to Emerald City to meet a man called Oz who they thought could give them something they didn't have. What was the Lion in search of? Courage. The Tin Man, a heart, and Scarecrow's looking for a brain. But if you recall throughout the story, each of these characters came into a situation or ran into a circumstance where, based on what was going on around them, they had to act. And they had to sort of show or demonstrate this attribute that they thought they didn't have. The Lion had to become courageous, the Scarecrow had to use his brain, and the Tin Man had to use his heart. For all of you leaders in the room, or those of you who doubt that you're a leader, if you'll ever be a leader, I want to encourage you that I believe what you feel like you need, you already have. It often takes circumstances to bring these things out in us. I believe all of you who aspire for leadership are swimmers and you're not sinkers, but I think you have to have enough confidence and have people around you who can help support you to get where you want to go. Ignite your passion. So what makes me passionate about the work that I'm doing and have been committed to full-time now for the past 14 years? And this is part of that. So this picture may or may not look familiar to you all. Has anyone seen this photo before? Do you know who these gentlemen are, or what do we call them? Four guys. The Greensboro Four. Well, see, she probably reads really well, too. But these gentlemen are often called the Greensboro Four, the Woolworth Four. They're also called the A&T Four. These were 4 freshmen, college students at North Carolina A&T State University, my undergraduate alma mater. And what they decided to do one day was to go to a Woolworth's lunch counter and not only buy lunch, but demand to be served there at the counter. The first date of the first sit-in that this group staged was February 1st, 1960. So what was the problem with them going into this space on February 1st, 1960, saying, hey, I want to buy my lunch and sit here and eat it? What was the problem? Segregation. At that point, it was illegal for people of color, black people in this country, to do those types of things, to sit down in the same spaces as Caucasians and eat, to use the same restrooms, the same water fountains, to sit in the same seating areas like we are here today. Black people could go to the movies, but they had to sit in the balcony. So my parents actually lived this experience, and my parent was a member of the class of 1963, along with these young men at North Carolina A&T. And she helped to protest, she helped to march, she participated in demonstrations, just like many people who you all know, and maybe some in this room, to fight for equal rights, to fight for equal access of individuals. This is what motivates me. Knowing that legal segregation does not exist, but does happen in many ways across the country, but through the opportunities I've been afforded to work at places like Northwestern, at Brown, at Harvard Medical School, at Brigham and Women's Hospital, and we'll see where I go next, right? Because the leader's always thinking forward. I just can't understand why, people shouldn't have opportunities to be admitted to places like those and to train there and to strive there, and I try to help enhance their success. So the last thing I'll leave with you is being true to yourself and whatever you decide to do. Who has this book? Wonderful. I'm glad to hear that so many of you have it, because I believe in making things very plain and simple, and Dr. Seuss was a truly prolific philosopher, I'll call him, but he wrote things that are not only relevant for kids, but also for adults, and things that we often need to remind ourselves. And on being true to yourself and the places you'll go, he says, you have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, and you can steer yourself anywhere you choose. You're on your own, and you know what you know, and you are the guy or gal who'll decide where you'll go. The only challenge that I will give you is to move forward from this conference thinking about how you can further develop your vision, how you can further develop the group around you who serve as mentors and even sponsors who can help you get there, and be sure that the impact that you want to have and the impact that you want to make and all those contributions are all for the right reasons. Some of us do use our power for bad, right? But I encourage you to use your power for good. And with that, I'll say thank you.
Thank you, Jabbar. So now we will begin our panel discussion. If anyone has any questions, we've got 2 mics on each side, so if you could go up and ask your question to our panelists.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Arne Bakker. I work with Ph.D.s and postdocs at Stanford Career Education, and I really believe in a connections model where part of our role is to allow for connections that help people through their life. One thing I'm interested to hear more about is the sponsorship, where people in leadership roles can open doors. Since right now we're still in the today and not the tomorrow setting, where there's not always a lot of diversity. So I think for sponsorship, especially for underrepresented groups or women, it might be a lot harder in academia or industry. And I think, Jabbar, you mentioned nursing a sponsor. So what are your advices for, if you're an underrepresented group or if you're a woman, how do you find a sponsor? How do you make sure that sponsors are inclusive so it doesn't perpetuate the current status?
So Jabbar has turned this over to me, but we will both respond. I think it's incumbent upon us as the leaders to take that on. And the challenge to a leader today is to recognize, again, I always tell people, look for somebody who doesn't look like you. It's very easy for me to identify all the people I know who look like me. And I try, and I encourage all of our leaders as well to do the same thing. So I think you're going out on a limb, and there's no question about that. But you have to do it, because until we start to do that, women have been, plenty of women have been in the workforce and in the pipeline that we should have far more women in leadership positions than we do in science and medicine. And part of that is that people don't see them as leaders. There used to be a think leader, think male mindset. And one of the ways of changing that is to get the leaders to say, why are we leaving 50% of the talent on the bench? Don't we want all the best on the field? And to challenge, our colleagues to do that. So I think it's incumbent upon those of us who are in leadership positions to really act as sponsors, to identify people who don't look like us and to bring them forward and promote them into positions where they will be seen as leaders.
In addition, what I'd say is that mentors can be transformed or evolved to become sponsors. Yeah. I think you should seek out mentors as people who you admire, who have skills that you appreciate, or who are doing things that you see yourself doing or have been places you want to go. over time, as you develop relationship and you get to understand each other and they get to understand your mission and vision, which you've clearly thought about and articulated, I think the relationship will advance and they will begin or feel comfortable to, again, put their name or co-sign things, for you and speak on your behalf when you're not around. So I would say focus on the mentors first, and then maybe that could evolve into sponsorship.
One other thing, too, is that you have to be visible. So you have to start to volunteer for things. You have to put your hand in the air, because if you're not visible, it's going to be hard for anybody to identify you. So you have to start to be visible to people, to when there's an opportunity to lead something that you say, I'll take that on, that I will do that. Men are more likely to do this than women. Women think they have to have done it 500 times before they even qualify to apply, whereas men think they can do it, and they do it. But I think it's incumbent upon all of you to become more visible, to make, to put your hand in the air for certain leadership, or even leading a committee, some positions that they're looking for.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hamed Mirzai. I'm the president of the Postdoctoral Association at the University of Southern California. I'm very bad at asking questions, which I guess my question makes it a little bit better. So we talked about leadership, and we talked about introvert and extrovert people. And sometimes there's a lot of tests that you can go see if you're an introvert or extrovert. But I feel like the bigger problem is when people think they're good leaders and they pick up that act, or they pick up that role and start acting, and versus the other people that could be great leaders, but they choose to be followers. What is the litmus test to figure out you're not a good leader, you should let somebody else lead?
Personal introspection, knowing oneself. Jabbar.
Right, and just considering the results, like what are the outcomes of this supposed, leadership? I mean, just thinking about that. But if you're talking about like yourself, for example, maybe, or how does one determine whether they're a good leader or not?
My arrogance says I'm a very good leader.
Well, what I would say is confident leaders and effective leaders are not afraid to receive feedback. So I would say ask the people around you who are on your team and your peers who maybe work at the same level with you, what they think about your leadership.
Thank you.
He's kind of trying to let me go next because my question was actually similar to that. Well, and so I was going to ask.
So can you tell us your name and where
sorry,
you're from?
so I'm Katie Flint-Im. I'm the director of the Office of Postdoctoral Affairs at Stony Brook University. And something that I find myself thinking when I think about programming that I want to do for my postdocs and my graduate students is, of course I want to teach them all how to be great leaders, and I want to teach them about leadership types and things like that. And at the back of my mind, I wonder something a little bit similar in the sense that, I think about the syllogism, there's no I in TEAM, and if we were an entire country of leaders, I don't know how much we'd get done. And so then I almost feel like there's, maybe not shame is the right word, but like saying that you don't want to be a leader sometimes then sounds like the wrong thing to say. And obviously, most of us are leaders here because that's why we're here and we're at this kind of an event, but there are some people who are supporters or followers, to borrow the term. And I was just wondering if either of you could sort of comment on how do you talk about not wanting to be a leader, and when is that okay?
Well, I think the timing occurs when you're ready to divulge that. But what needs to happen first is being honest with yourself about what you're good at and what you're not. So I would say even if you don't want to be a leader, but you have the skills and abilities to be an effective leader, you communicate well, you follow through, you keep your word, you can get along with folks, and you're pretty diplomatic, then maybe you need to rethink that. And that's what I was talking about personally, being an introvert. And if I had my way in events like this, I'd be on the back row, just watching and listening and not participating. But I realize I have something different to offer, and that leaders are given certain opportunities that most people aren't, and you have to take advantage of those. So it's a type of accountability, I think, that comes along with the talents and gifts that you have. So I would say, think about it, get beyond it. But then what I do personally in my downtime meaning when I get off work or when I leave a conference, I go home and crash, by myself, and I relax, I do the things that I enjoy, and I sort of replenish that way, so.
Well, and just to follow up on that, I wonder if part of it is that maybe you're not always a leader in all situations. Because I guess I think about it from the perspective as a postdoc leader, in that should I be telling all my postdocs that they should all be leaders?
There's something called situational leadership. So leadership can, change with situations. I don't think there's anything wrong. I think it's about opportunities. I always look at it, if people have a desire to be a leader or want a certain position, it's about providing the opportunities for them to come forward and compete for that. Now, some people will choose not to be, but as a PI of a lab, you are, by definition, a leader. Now, you may not have a leadership title as president or dean or something like that, but you are a leader. So leaders exist in many forms throughout the organization. So, but no, I think that I agree with Jabbar. I think that at some point you can look at whether that's really what you don't want, or is it because you're just afraid to try. But there's nothing wrong with saying, that's not what I want. But at some point down the line, they may want to be leaders, and that's okay too.
Me? Okay. So my name is Amy Boero, and I'm with the postgrad organization at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. So I'd like to know how you think we can compete against the mentality that to be a successful leader in science, you have to neglect the personal portions of your life. I feel like a lot of high achievers become really discouraged after a while because it takes so long to make any kind of headway or to become influential in science, because they feel like they have to neglect all of their personal life to get to that point.
So I think that you do that at your peril. I think it's really important to know what's important and when, and understand that there are many things in your life and they have different priorities at different times, and to be able to honor those priorities. I, for a long time, did not have a child, and I decided, when I was a professor actually, I woke up and I said, I don't think I'm going to be happy. I love what I do, but it wasn't going to be enough, so I decided, that I wanted to have children, and was fortunate enough to be able to do so. But I think that, and it does take a long time, so I think it's to understand that, and you all are demanding this too. I mean, when I came along, it was like, if I wasn't in the lab before the head of the lab, and left before the head of the lab, I was in serious trouble because I wasn't producing, right? I wasn't serious, particularly being a woman. I wasn't very serious about this. That's changing, and you are changing this. I want you to know that you all sitting out there have the power to make these cultural changes. You are bringing a different mindset to this. You're bringing a different approach to it. You want a balanced life. You want to have a personal life of some kind. Whether that involves a family or not is beside the point. Everybody deserves and should have a personal life. So you have the power to do this. And so I think that's where the change is evolving, it's transitioning with you. Some of us, who came along a while ago, we're still having problems with that, but that's our problem, not yours.
Nothing to add, but I think embrace the power that you have. For example, when I joined Brown back in 2009, postdocs there were talking about wanting sick leave and vacation and maternity policies because they didn't exist. But a few of us administrators rallied with them, and we created those policies. Later, they said that they wanted more lactation rooms and in different places on campus that actually had doors that locked and had refrigerators and things like that. And we work with them on that too. And I think that begins to impact the culture and helps people to acknowledge the different members of the population and what the very distinct needs are that they have. So, get some folks together, talk about what you want, and I'd say, move to action in a group, get some allies who are faculty and administrators, and you can make a change.
Okay,
Thank you.
Take two more questions before we need to.
Hi, I'm still Dan Jay from Tufts. I'm the postdoc officer and also maintain an active research lab. Both of you touched on this aspect of defining your mission and then prioritizing in accordance to that. And I've always used the expression that I do mentoring and research for free, and they have to pay me very well to be the chairman of the photocopy committee, because that's what our job is. We wear many hats. And my question to you is that, and I believe the advice to define that mission and to pursue it doggedly is so critical. However, everyone knows that particularly at the young stage, your demands are taken in many directions, and what can you say yes and what can you say no to? Do either of you have good strategies by which you can fulfill that concept of following your mission and ways to say no to all the other extraneous things that get thrown onto your plate which are less vital to your mission?
Can you first?
Okay. So, why is that? So I think one of the things, if it's something you're really interested in doing, an opportunity comes along and somebody's asked you to do something, but you just feel you can't take it on because you're too busy, never close the door. Say, I'm really interested in doing that. I would love to do that, but right now, I just can't, I won't be able to do it well. But please come back to me, because I would like to do that. So that does a couple of things. First of all, it shows that you're thoughtful. It shows that you really are thinking about, I don't have the time to do this, but I really want it. When somebody says that to me, I have a great deal of respect for that individual, regardless of who they are. Because it's easy to say yes to everything, and then you're not successful. So my advice is, and if you just don't, if you just something you don't want to do, you can politely decline. But if it's something you want to do, leave the door open, and that's the way to do it.
When you have an opportunity, depending on, again, level of seniority or whatever, you can decide, again, what things you do want to do, what's the best use of your time and what's not, and again, what's activity versus progress, what's moving you forward. I had a friend or a colleague say at one point, something they learned regarding how to say no to things that maybe their chair or advisor or someone who was a little higher asked them to do, was to sit down with them and to say, well, I would love to do this thing that you're asking me to do now, but maybe you can help me think about how this might impact these other things and these other things you've asked me to do, to get their opinion on sort of, or help them really think about what they're saying, like asking you to do a 12th thing on top of the 11 that they've already asked you to do. So sometimes that could work.
I would just follow it up with, if it's something you're passionate about, then certainly you want to leave the door open. If it has passion, Carlos Castaneda's was an author who wrote crazy things because he used to go in the desert and smoke peyote. But he said that, you come to a fork in the road, or there are two options open to you, you look at both of them, you take the one that has heart or passion, and that if that doesn't work, there's always another one. But I think it's important.
That's your mission.
Yeah. But I think it's important to, really consider, if you really have passion for something, then you do want to, hang on to that. If not do it now, you want to kind of leave the door open to do it.
Okay, one last question.
Hello, my name is Liu Chen. I'm from MD Anderson as a postdoc. First of all, thank you very much for both of you for these wonderful presentations, and I really learned a lot. So my question is, kind of related to the balance between your postdoc job and the efforts you have to spend in order to gain the leadership experience and in order to lead efforts outside of your lab. I think the situation is that as a postdoc in a lab, you normally find the project you have to lead is very demanding, given these twists and turns you have to navigate through to have a successful research project. But in the meanwhile, for people like us who want to lead some efforts outside the lab, so what's your best advice you can provide for me or for all of us as a postdoc, that we can communicate effectively to our mentor so that we can balance the work in the lab as well as work outside of the lab.
So your question was not around necessarily getting leadership experience, but how to communicate what you're doing and the experience you're trying to get to your PI.
Yes.
I think PIs want you to be trained to be the best that you can, and when you go out and become independent, you represent them. So I would say talk about how you gaining these extra experiences are helping you to gain a different and stronger and well-rounded skill set, so that when you do go out of the lab, whether you're in a research or leadership or teaching position, that you're more prepared, I think, because of that diverse training, and you will represent he or she in the lab in a better way. But the other thing is, a lot of PIs, but of course we all know this isn't the case for everyone, truly understand that you will not become their clone, and that you will not stay in the research lab, and that you will go after that tenure track position and so forth. So if you're working with someone who acknowledges that reality, of course it's much better. But if not, I think, again, you do have to figure out how to approach the conversation.
The only thing I would add to that is people love it when you ask them for their advice. They're all too willing to give you it. So I would encourage you to talk to the PI, to talk to your mentor and to the PI of the lab, and express what you're interested in or what you're having difficulty with, and ask them for their advice. And they're very flattered when you do that, and mostly they will listen and provide you with some good advice. So you can never go wrong by asking. Never go wrong by asking.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. That concludes our plenary session for today. We'd like to invite Steve Johnson up.
So, first of all, I'm not Steve Johnson. We had a switch kind of last minute. My name is Tom Garnett, actually, with Garnett Powers and Associates. Steve is here. I'm sorry? There he is. But he's given this award out in the past, but this year we decided to switch it up a little bit. So first of all, what a great session that was. I thought that was very good information and obviously very appropriate for this award that I'm going to be presenting. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to present the Garnett Powers and Associates Mentor Award. This award has special meaning for us at GPA for a number of reasons. We have, we have daily interaction with postdocs across the country and understand and appreciate how difficult their research lives can be, some coming to the United States from other countries, hastily thrown into our culture, some having families to support while working long hours in the lab, and all of them taking on the risk of research without the knowledge of where they may be 3 to 5 years when their postdoc is finished. In other words, a lot of stress. In our continuing effort in collaboration with the NPA to assist in improving the lives of postdocs, this award allows us to reward and recognize those faculty members who understand the plight of the postdoc and are truly engaged in assisting postdocs achieving their research goals with focused dedication, kind attention, and an optimistic spirit. Our award recipient this year, Dr. Shannon Manning, is indeed one of these outstanding mentors. Dr. Manning earned her doctoral degree in molecular epidemiology in 2001 and served as an emerging infectious diseases research fellow through the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. She is currently a Michigan State University Foundation Associate Professor in the Department of Microbiology and Molecular Genetics. Since her appointment at MSU, Dr. Manning has mentored several undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate students, along with 22 graduate-level rotation students. Her undergraduate and graduate students have earned multiple awards and fellowships for their outstanding research. Dr. Manning was nominated by several postdocs, all of whom shared how compassionate a mentor she has been, one saying that Dr. Manning emphasizes lifelong learning with prominence on the big picture idea to benefit society as a whole, that her support for her postdoctoral trainees further continues by helping them build their careers in academia or as industrial or government scientists based on their inclination. She was credited as providing a productive and open work environment, with her nominators describing her as extremely patient and compassionate, listening to all thoughts, ideas, and troubles. Dr. Manning was also described as encouraging her mentees to pursue their goals and projects with hard work and dedication, while being their friend, teacher, mentor, and great inspiration. I could go on with more inspirational descriptions, but I think it's time for you to meet this outstanding mentor who provides the wonderful example for all mentors to follow. I am pleased and honored to introduce the Garnet Powers Mentor Award recipient, Dr. Shannon Manning. If I may just read this real quickly. In recognition of her exceptional mentoring of postdoctoral scholars and her strong commitment to training well-prepared faculty and practitioners for the future. Congratulations. I think they want to take the picture of us together like this.
Okay.
I'm going to put it down here.
Okay, sure. Okay, thank you so much. This is really such a great honor. I'd like to thank the selection committee as well as GPA for supporting the award. And I would particularly like to thank my 3 postdocs who nominated me. One is here today, Dr. Pallavi Singh. And I really consider myself lucky to have been able to be their mentor. They're a really great group of diverse women to work with. And I've had really wonderful experiences in my mentoring career, which I still think is just beginning. You know, as mentors, you know, we're continuing to learn and grow along with you. And just to be recognized for doing a good job really means so much to me. So thank you very much.
Okay, I will say that I am standing between you and lunch, so I will be super brief. But I just wanted to make another quick logistical announcement that didn't quite make it into the opening this morning. This is kind of the hard part of the meeting, or what I think is the hard part of the meeting, when you have to decide which session you would like to attend, because there are so many good sessions. They're all fantastic. And because they're concurrent, that means, unfortunately, you can only choose one each time. But what I wanted to kind of put out there is to encourage you to take this time during lunch, in addition to attending the lunch-arounds, to look ahead throughout the entire program and look what the entire weekend has to offer. Because although no 2 sessions are alike, there are some recurring themes or topics, and it may be that a session on a topic you're interested in recurs or shows up again later. So it's best to kind of look at the agenda as a whole and make your plan now so that you don't miss anything you're really interested in. That's my advice anyway as a 3rd-time meeting attendee. So everyone go enjoy lunch out in the main hall, and thank you very much.